Beloved, how have you been sleeping? Yeah, me too. I have been having some trouble. I try to get off screens earlier in the evening, but now I just end up reading novels way later than I mean to. When I was a child and I had a hard time getting to sleep, we lived in a rectory that had paper-thin floors. So my parents would put a record on the record player and turn up the volume really high from downstairs, and then the music would float up through the floor to my room in the dark. The record that my father often put on included Brahms' Lullaby, but it was too hard to just play that over and over, so usually he would just play the whole album. It was a recording of Brahms' Lieder, art and love songs, sung by a soprano called Ellie Ameling, accompanied on the piano. When I went to college, my mother gave me a gift, which was that she had used the tape deck to record a copy of it for me on cassette. I don't remember exactly why I couldn't sleep when I was a child. Rushing minds, lots of worries, likely I was afraid of the dark. This is a dark season. Despite the sunlight of recent days, and despite the fact that in the church, we are in the season of Epiphany, a season of light and revelation. This is the time in the church when we rejoice, just as we sang, that Christ's incarnation has been revealed to the whole world. And yet, we may discover something that we have forgotten. We forgot that the transition from darkness to light can be startling, can be quite painful. Seeing everything for what it is doesn't always feel like a gift. It can make us hurt. For a time, my commute to work took me past a painted wood church that advertised "The Bible Made Plain." And I think of that sign often, and not just when I'm preparing for sermons. So this week, for example, I really appreciate Micah 6. It fits on a bumper sticker, it makes a nice tattoo, do justice, love kindness, walk humbly. And today it's paired with the Beatitudes, the more abstract Matthew version. I have even heard people identify themselves by this passage, as in, I'm a Matthew 5 Christian. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. It's very tempting to hear these as a list of goals, a personal checklist. Be like this, and you will be blessed. I look down the list, though, and see only possibilities for my own disqualification. Definitely not meek, definitely not pure in heart. And while I appreciate the Beatitudes as much as any Matthew 5 Christian, sometimes I feel like it's almost redundant to preach on them. Aren't they made plain already? And then last week I saw an ad. It is a reel made by the Department of Homeland Security, and it runs about a minute long. The first image is a text from today's gospel, written in Gothic script over a green night vision glow. It says, "Blessed are the peacemakers." All the images that follow are similar to that first darkness. Snippets of soldiers in the dark, climbing up and over helicopters, holding weapons as they run around corners, then finally kicking in or blowing up doors, and honestly, zip-tying the wrists of faceless people with brown skin. Near the end, the second half of the verse comes up on the screen. For they shall be called the sons of God. Among other troubling aspects, this truly truly heretical read of the gospel sees the Beatitudes as goals, the way I did at first. It seems to ask, don't you want to be like this? Don't you want to be a peacemaker like this? Wheaton professor Esau McCauley writes, this fusion of Christian language with imperial ways of being is the consistent error of Christian nationalism. To take Christianity seriously, he says, we have to take the cross seriously, not just as a vision of violence or even of state terror, but also of transformation through weakness. For those who understand power only through domination, it is incomprehensible that social weakness could be a source of strength. And yet, in the Christian story, the story that we tell here every week, it is that refusal of domination, that transformation through weakness, that is the whole story itself. What if, instead of seeing the Beatitudes as prescriptions for ourselves as individuals, be like this and you will be blessed, we saw them as guides for living in community? How do we make a place that blesses the pure in heart? How do we, as Christians, bless the merciful, bless those who hunger for righteousness? What better way to make our lives a blessing to those who mourn than to make a world where they will mourn no longer, or at least no longer alone? But if we are to succeed in this, we must first see all the injustice. We must fully witness the suffering. And not only on the screens that paralyze us with horror, but in our own community, in our practices and policies, in our plans and dreams. Where is there a lack of mercy? Where among us is inequality, discrimination, fear, and hatred? Who is trying to tell us about it? And what is keeping us from listening? Walking humbly with God begins by walking humbly with each other. It is a dark season. In this time, when many of us feel isolated and separate from our neighbors, when the inundation of violence becomes too much, it is easy to pull away from the awkward discomfort of connection and vulnerability. Even before the pandemic, much of our society was already pushing us apart, and now we live in a surveillance-filled, machine-driven, and fearful world. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." But in a world like ours, what does a peacemaker even look like? Surely not someone who lists everything that's wrong and strongly condemns it, but also not someone who is determined to save the world all by themselves, like a superhero. To make peace requires slowly building a huge web, person to person, connection to connection. An incarnational presence to each other is how we do this. Despite the suffering and death that Jesus witnessed, despite the suffering and death and fear that he himself experienced, his physical presence was his ultimate solidarity with us. Emmanuel incarnate and Emmanuel resurrected. At our vigil for troubled times this past week, our litany began with a statement from Dr. King. Peace is not the absence of tension, but the presence of justice. To successfully work for justice, a peacemaker must first be well acquainted with the specific injustices of the world. They must be fully present to reality. Liberation theologian John Sobrino calls it the primordial demand that we must be affected by suffering and not remain indifferent, and that is what pushes us into merciful action. When we see people killed on the street, people who are working for peace, many of us are deeply affected, even though we do not know them. Most of us feel helpless, hopeless. Soon after the second killing in Minneapolis, Garrett Bucks, a community organizer who lives in Minnesota, wrote, "To those whose hearts are bursting, but who might worry that we're not doing enough, I honestly don't think that's the right question. Until we arrive at beloved community, the question of enough is only useful for inculcating shame and burnout. The more important question, if you are noticing your heart today, what does it make you want to do?" Yes, this is a dark season, but we need not fear the pain that light can bring. To be present to this world is overwhelming, but we do not have to do it alone. The Spirit is always moving among us, bringing us to an understanding of God through the bodies of those around us, each one a vision of God's powerful love for this broken world. After all, we are here. We have gathered in this place. And during communion today, the choir will offer a piece by Brahms, that same composer who used to lull me to sleep. Brahms created the piece Gleiches Lied when he was 23, calling it a double canon at the ninth, which means there are two pairs of voices chasing each other, each running at the interval of a ninth, which at first sounds like dissonance. Many of us are familiar with a musical canon, two voices or more singing the same line but beginning at different times, so that you get the same musical idea from different voices crossing as they pass. But Brahms's piece is also a beautiful example of what's called counterpoint. It's when multiple melodies, not singing the exact same tune, join together at certain moments to create a moment of recognition, of connection. Counterpoint is like a conversation where people weave in and out of common ground. A piece like Gleiches Lied can hold multiple melodies and allow us to hear where they overlap, where they crash and pull apart again. There are two moments where the voices come out of their weave to echo each other directly. This call comes twice. Once when they say, "Sei stille," be calm. And the second, "Steh feste," be steadfast. What is it, fellow mortals, that God asks of us in this moment? To be fully, calmly present, to be loving to one another, and to be steadfast with God. Amen.